The screaming began with a single unplugged cord. One moment, everything was calm. The steady beep of monitors, the low hum of filtered air, and my son Thomas James, his tiny chest rising and falling inside his incubator like he was dreaming peacefully. The next, chaos exploded like a gunshot. Alarms shrieked. Lights flashed. Nurses burst into the room like it was a war zone. I barely had time to scream before they were pushing me aside, shouting numbers and codes I didn't fully understand, but felt in my bones, because my tiny baby boy, was suddenly turning blue. And the man responsible was standing next to the incubator holding a phone charger like it was a goddamn VIP pass. My father, Walter James, blazer still buttoned, face annoyed, had just unplugged my son's oxygen monitor so my brother, Chad James, could charge his phone. "What's the big deal?" my mother, Margaret James, said from the doorway, in that same breezy tone she used when I forgot to send birthday cards. "He has an important interview." Charge nurse Betty didn't even look at her. She was bent over Thomas, fingers on his tiny pulse, yelling for respiratory support as the monitors flickered back to life. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I just stood there, back against the wall, watching the worst moment of my life unfold, because my family didn't know or didn't care what they were doing. My son was fighting to breathe, and they were worried about cell reception. Let me back up. 25 weeks and 1 day into my pregnancy, I woke up in a pool of blood. I remembered the silence before the sirens. The way John James, my husband, fumbled with his keys as I clutched the counter, trying not to scream. We didn't make it to the hospital in time for a slow, controlled birth. There was no gentle music or push playlists or ice chips. There was just steel, cold, bright operating lights, voices speaking fast. My body cut open in minutes. And then Thomas, 1 pound 6 ounces. Skin like tissue paper, bones like glass. His eyes fused shut. A fighter from the second he left me. They called him a micro-preemie. I called him my miracle. The NICU became my universe. I learned to read oxygen saturation like other people read texts. I knew when the dips were just blips and when they meant war. I slept upright in a plastic chair. I knew the names of every nurse, every night shift doctor, every cleaning staff member. I stopped being a woman. I became a machine with one purpose: keep him alive. John took double shifts at his factory job. Our savings were already gone after the emergency surgery. Insurance covered what it could, but barely. Still, we held it together. Then one day Thomas was stable. He was gaining weight. His lungs, the size of walnuts, were learning to breathe on their own. He opened his eyes, gripped my pinky. "Another month," the doctor said. "He's a fighter." I believed her. That was the same day my parents called. "We're finally coming to meet him," Margaret said cheerfully, as if 2 months late was perfectly reasonable. "We'll swing by. We're taking Chad to his interview in Manhattan." "Swing by," I repeated, feeling my spine tighten. "Well, his interview is very important, you understand. But we'll stop in. Don't worry, we won't be long. The way you talk about grabbing a coffee." They arrived the next day and head-to-toe beige. Margaret in designer sunglasses like the NICU was too bright. Walter in a navy blazer and loafers, constantly checking his phone. Chad, my golden child brother, looked annoyed to be there at all. The first words out of Margaret's mouth were, "He's so small," as if she expected him to be doing backflips. "He's perfect," I snapped. Chad didn't even look at him. He was already scrolling Instagram. "My phone's dying. Where can I plug this in?" "Down the hall," I said, nodding toward the family lounge. He blinked. "Too far. Bad reception." That's when Walter saw it. The red outlet. The one clearly marked medical use only. The one powering Thomas's oxygen monitor. "This one's perfect," he said. Then he reached down and unplugged it. That's when the beeping stopped. And the screaming started. I don't remember what I screamed. I just remember the sound that came out of me wasn't human. It was primal. A mother's war cry. Sharp, ugly, and loud enough to make even the machines hesitate. Walter jumped back, cords in hand like a guilty child caught with scissors. Chad, ever the oblivious narcissist, rolled his eyes. "It's just a cord," he muttered, staring at the blinking percentage on his phone. God, you're so dramatic. Betty didn't say a word at first. She was too busy working, hands moving fast, voice calm but clipped, barking numbers to another nurse while she manually resuscitated Thomas. My baby, whose lips were turning purple. Respiratory, she shouted. Now. Margaret hovered uselessly behind her, looking offended that no one had offered her a chair. I don't understand, she said, holding her hands like they might catch flame. He just unplugged one thing. Just one thing, as if it wasn't Thomas's goddamn lifeline. The next few minutes were a blur. Alarms, oxygen tanks, crash carts, wires, nurses pushing and pulling and taping sensors back to tiny limbs while Thomas's numbers plummeted. When the pulse oximeter came back online, Betty's face went pale. 79%, she muttered. We're losing him. For 2 endless minutes, I watched them fight for Thomas's life. I watched his rib cage flutter. I watched his tiny fists curl. I watched everything in me splinter apart. Then finally, the numbers started to rise. 80, 85, 90, his color returned. His fingers twitched. The machines found rhythm again. Betty stepped back, took a breath, and turned, not to me, but to my parents. Get out. Walter bristled. Excuse me. She didn't flinch. Security is already on the way. You endangered a critical infant. This is a locked medical unit. You don't belong here. We're family, Margaret protested. You can't kick out family. You just unplugged life support so your son could charge his phone, Betty snapped. Try me. That's when security arrived. 2 guards in Navy uniforms who'd clearly dealt with this kind of stupidity before. Ma'am, sir, you need to come with us. This is ridiculous, Walter muttered. It was just a mistake. You almost killed him. I cut in, my voice steady for the first time. Don't pretend it was anything else. Chad didn't even look up. He was still scrolling, still fixated on the dying battery icon. Can I at least charge it for 5 minutes? He asked. Actually asked, while Thomas was still on high-flow oxygen 2 feet away. Get out. That got his attention. They left muttering, scoffing. Chad whining about professionalism. Margaret loudly declaring she would never donate to this hospital again. Good. Let them blacklist themselves. But the damage was already done. That night, Thomas crashed twice. 2 episodes of bradycardia. His heart rate dipping dangerously low, triggering fresh alarms, new medications, a full overnight observation team. He'd been stable. He'd been winning. Now we were back to square one. I didn't sleep. John flew home on emergency leave. We sat in the dark together, holding each other like the room might collapse. 3 days passed before Thomas stabilized again. 3 days of not knowing if he'd recover from the setback. And as I watched the nurses and doctors give everything to save him, while remembering the entitled expressions on my family's faces, I knew something in me had changed. I wasn't just angry. I wanted justice. What Walter, Margaret, and Chad didn't know, what they never thought to ask, was that the NICU had cameras. Every hallway, every room, every plug, every moment. For safety. For protection. For the kind of accountability you don't question when lives hang on the edge of machines. So the entire thing, the unplugging, the alarms, the shouting, Chad whining about his phone, had been recorded in crystal clear high definition. And guess who had access? Carolyn, not just a nurse, but the charge nurse's boss. A NICU veteran. The same woman who had saved Thomas's life more than once. She called me 2 days after the incident. I filed an incident report, she said bluntly. Legal's reviewing the footage, but I thought you might want to be aware. Aware. It took everything in me not to scream through the phone. Instead, I said, thank you. And then I made calls of my own. First, Frank Miller, John's best friend from college. Now a malpractice attorney in the city with a reputation for tearing legal opponents to shreds. I'm not suing the hospital, I told him. They did everything right. But you want leverage, he said. Got it. I told him everything that had happened. He didn't even interrupt. He just listened, quiet, controlled, like he was counting to 10 while imagining dropping subpoenas like grenades. That's criminal endangerment of a minor. Reckless negligence. Potential sabotage of life support equipment, he said. Want me to make some calls? Yes. Then I called the ethics board. See, Chad had always bragged about being the next big thing in law. Ivy League internships. High-powered connections. His Instagram was a shrine to ambition. Photos of him in tailored suits with captions like #grindset and future DA. He even ran a blog called the Justice Journal. Irony, meet karma. I sent the footage. The screenshots. The blog post he made that very day bragging about doing his part in a hospital NICU like he was on a mission trip, conveniently leaving out the part where he nearly killed a child. Next was Walter's employer, a hospital administrator himself. Oh yes, the kind of man who should absolutely know what medical use only means when it's printed on a red socket in a neonatal intensive care unit. I sent them a very polite email with the video. Their response was less polite. 2 days later, Walter was placed on leave. A week after that, terminated. Something about liability, insurance, reputation, and the usual PR talk. Then came the slow unraveling. Law firms began canceling Chad's interviews. Some were quiet about it. Others cited ethical concerns. A few didn't respond at all. Chad texted me that week. WTF is going on? Why is everyone ghosting me? Did you say something? I stared at the message. I could have said a lot. But instead, I just deleted it. No answer. No reaction. Just silence. Because I didn't have to say anything. The facts spoke louder than I ever could. Still, I wasn't done. I'd been screenshotting Chad's online life for years. Every time he bragged about cheating on an exam. Every drunk photo he posted while claiming to be studying. Every shady DM from his burner account. The one he used to flirt with interns, joke about professors, harass girls anonymously. I printed them all. Neatly labeled. Sent them to every law firm he applied to. No return address. Just a note. Thought you'd want the full picture. He never saw it coming. And Margaret? She tried her own form of damage control. Posted on Facebook. We were escorted out of the hospital for simply trying to help our grandson. Heartbreaking. Some nurses are so cruel these days. Oh, sweet summer child. Turns out nurses have Facebook too. One of them shared the footage with context. With fury. It went viral. Parenting forums. Hospital ethics boards. Facebook mom groups. Twitter threads. Reddit AMAs. The hashtag started as a trickle, then flooded in, #NISANightmare, #ChargerGate, entitled and dangerous. Chad's Instagram following plummeted. Walter's LinkedIn vanished. Margaret's book club stopped replying. Their church group suddenly had a lot of schedule conflicts. My family had spent years building a facade of perfection. Now, they were collapsing in front of thousands. And I hadn't even lifted a finger. All I did was tell the truth. Thomas came home the same week my parents lost everything. 4 pounds, 6 ounces. No tubes. No wires. Just warm breath and a heartbeat against my chest. We cried when we carried him through our apartment door. Not from sadness, no. From something sacred. A kind of joy that only comes after months of terror and whispered prayers. He was home. And that very same day, as I rocked him to sleep, the phone rang. It was the district attorney's office. We've reviewed the footage. The voice said, calm, steady, unshakable. We're pressing charges. Walter and Margaret, the people who had always lived above the rules, were suddenly being held accountable. Real rules. Legal rules. Walter received 6 months in jail. Margaret got probation and mandatory community service. I heard she spent it sorting medical gloves in silence at a city clinic. They drained their retirement fighting the charges. Hired fancy lawyers. Appealed. Pleaded. Called it a misunderstanding. But video doesn't lie. And neither do medical records. Chad wasn't charged. But he was named in every article. Every ethics panel. Every legal forum post. The clip of him whining about his phone battery while Thomas turned blue became infamous. He didn't just lose interviews. He lost the whole curated future he had crafted online. Stanford Law distanced themselves. Firms refused to meet with him. He ended up working at a tech store in a strip mall 2 states away. Poetic. I ignored every call, every email, every message asking me to speak on their behalf. I had a baby learning to breathe again. He came first. One night, during Thomas's post-surgery therapy, I held him to my chest, skin to skin. Kangaroo care. His tiny fingers curled around my necklace, his cheek warm against my collarbone. And I realized I had never felt stronger. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. But the universe had one last twist to offer. It happened at Thomas's 2-year checkup. He was glowing, healthy, laughing as he chased Bubbles around the waiting room. I chatted with another mom, both of us making jokes about snack crumbs and diaper bags. Her daughter was eating goldfish off a clipboard. "So what do you do?" she asked. "Stay-at-home mom for now." "NICU grad," I replied. Her eyes lit up. "No way. Us too." We swapped war stories. Oxygen tanks. Sleepless nights. All the terrifying, sacred intimacy of almost losing your child and getting them back. Then she paused. "Wait, what was your son's name again?" "Thomas. Thomas James." She blinked. "Thomas James? Oh. My husband is a partner at Morrison & Barr." I froze. "The firm Chad interviewed with?" She nodded. "I was there when they played the video," she said quietly. "We show it to our new hires now. A cautionary tale." I stared. "The partner who almost hired him said your son saved them from the worst mistake they nearly made." I laughed, choked on it, smiled through it. She touched my arm gently. "Is he okay now?" I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo. Thomas in our backyard, cheeks round, chocolate on his face, chasing Bubbles in a red t-shirt and a toy stethoscope around his neck. "Perfect," I said. She grinned. "He's going to be a doctor, isn't he?" "He already thinks he is."